Yeah, she was an angry child.
Haley eventually moved out and went off to college. But police learned after Daniel Baggett's daughter went to college, Kathy and Daniel's relationship was still struggling. There were still problems.
Finally, in 2018, she asked him to leave.
But during the investigation, the police find out that Daniel Baggett has returned to her home a few times. He was still coming around. I think he kind of really wanted to continue their relationship.
That gave her really bad time. Why are you still seeing that guy? What are you seeing that guy for? Pam, I've got to be nice to him because he might drop the charges. You know, I got arrested. I go, what?
Even though she and Daniel Baggett have officially broken up and he's moved out, one night Daniel's over at Kathy's house and they get into an argument. She wants to put more separation between the two of them. It starts to get heated. And she ended up having to pull a gun on him to try to get him to leave.
She starts yelling, and the neighbor heard her yell. And then the police come because the neighbors complained about her yelling that she was going to shoot him. And then they arrested her for brandishing a weapon.
It was not long after Kathy and Daniel Baggett got into it in her home where she pulled a gun when the police discover her murdered in her own home.
You have a situation where people have dated, someone's at the crime scene, and you have half of that relationship who is dead in the basement. You know, domestic violence murders happen all the time. And so there is always some suspicion when you have a situation like this. Was this person involved?
When Kathy was murdered, the first thing I thought was that Dan had something to do with it. He had something to do with Kathy's demise, for sure. I didn't know very much about Francis Wilkie, but the first thing I thought was, did Dan know this guy? I thought, well, maybe he told this guy about Kathy's place.
This is a strange case. You have Kathy Anderson, you have Daniel Baggett, you have Daniel's daughter Haley, and you have Francis Wilkie. The police are trying to figure out how these people are all connected. And right now, they can't. Well, there's apparently one person to answer that.
My name's Daniel Baggett, and I figure you're going to tell the story anyway, so I might as well have my speak my piece.
So here's Daniel Baggett, the ex-boyfriend of Kathy Anderson. Remember, she kicked him out of the house. What are the odds that he comes over her home this specific night and she's dead? I'm suspicious of that. If that's all I have, I'm suspicious of him.
So I'm gonna be honest with you. Yeah, I mean, Kathy and I did have a contentious relationship at times. We were very loud, vocal people, and we could be having an argument, but I love Kathy very dearly. Even though I was 13 years younger than her, it didn't really matter to us. It never was an issue for her and I. We were having fun, and we were romantically involved for a while. And then I moved out in 2018. There were definitely a lot of ways it could have gone, and people look at it from a lot of different ways. They didn't know the facts. That night, I had this feeling in my stomach, just telling me to go by the house. I tried calling her earlier in the day, and I think the evening before, and I was unable to get a hold of her, which was uncommon. She always answered the phone. I got out of the truck, and I noticed the garbage cans were still in front of the house, which was extremely odd, because she was very religious about pulling those in as soon as they would be done. And so the fact that those cans were still there told me that either A, she wasn't home, or something was wrong,
So Daniel started bringing the garbage cans towards the back of the residence, and upon getting to the back of the house, he saw that Kathy's car was parked there.
He said there were just things that, having lived there, he saw as immediate red flags.
I called her again, and she didn't answer, and so I went inside and I started calling her name. And I saw her headband laying on the ground, and I went to the stairs, and that's when we came out of what used to be my daughter's bedroom. I mean, I don't live there anymore, so I was trying to make sure he wasn't a house guest or something. So I asked him, like, who are you? What are you doing here? He didn't say anything, and he had this weird look on his face. I asked him, I said, where is Kathy? And who are you?
Daniel said that the man did start walking down the stairs as if he planned to leave. So Daniel claimed to have been the person who called 911. He made a calculated decision that he could run to the kitchen and grab a knife, which he did, and got back to the staircase before the man was able to leave.
And I told him, I said, there's no way out except for down these stairs. And yeah, it was shortly thereafter when I heard the siren.
Daniel later told us that he didn't see Kathy. He never went down to the basement, but he sees this guy who he does not know. And Francis was saying to him, she's dead. I killed her a while ago. And so Daniel is extremely distraught.
They took me to the police station, and they're asking me, where were you? Or why did you go there? They asked me what happened, like the interaction between me and Mr. Wilkie. They asked me if I'd ever seen him before, and then they would ask me to go through it again.
Maybe Daniel Baggett knew Francis Wilkie, and maybe they came to some agreement, and that's how Francis Wilkie got there. Or maybe his daughter Haley knew Wilkie, and there's a connection there that led to Wilkie being in Kathy's house that night.
We needed to do an investigation to see whether or not there was a connection between Daniel Baggett and his family and Francis Wilkie. It's a question that has to be asked.
So the police detained Daniel Baggett for about 16 hours, but they have nothing to hold him on, so they let him go.
When we released Daniel, we still have a lot of work to do to clear Daniel Baggett to confirm that he was not involved in any way in the homicide of Kathy Anderson. And part of that is going to be looking at all the communication records that we can get a hold of. So Daniel turned over his cell phone so that we could look at it and download it.
Daniel Baggett's now released from custody. And lo and behold, he comes back to Kathy's house yet again. Daniel Baggett is found again trying to enter Kathy Anderson's house.
He was climbing through the window to get into the house, and he got caught.
There's a crime scene, and so no one was supposed to go inside.
Why is Daniel back in the house? Is he trying to find evidence that he left behind? All of Daniel Baggett's behavior about this case is very suspicious. It doesn't make sense. It's possible that Daniel Baggett's story is a lie. So it's not long after Kathy Anderson was murdered. Daniel Baggett comes back to Kathy's house again, and the police are called. And his story is, I came to check on her cats. Strange.
He climbed in the window to go get the cat.
Correct.
Why didn't he he just contact the police to let them know, hey, I want to go take care of our cats? Would that be okay? Not just go back into the house after there's been a homicide, after he's been a suspect. Very strange.
It didn't look good, you know, but Kathy loved those cats. And I was even thinking these cats have gone a good 2+ days without food and water. Like, I gotta go feed those cats.
It's a crime scene, and so entering it is essentially tampering with evidence. That's why someone would get arrested for doing that. Daniel's explanation for why he returned, while it made the case more difficult, I can't fault him for going to the residence that he used to live in, where the lady that he loved was killed viciously, to take care of the cats that were still surviving. Because ultimately, I couldn't find a motive for him to want to have Kathy Anderson killed. Daniel Baggett was not an heir to any of Kathy's property. Daniel and his daughter didn't stand to gain financially from her death.
For a very thorough investigation, it was abundantly clear to everyone that Daniel Baggett was in no way, shape, or form involved in the murder.
Nothing that we could find connected Francis Wolke to Daniel Baggett or this family. All the evidence shows that Francis Wolke is the only person who was responsible for the murder of Kathy Anderson.
The police discovered through the autopsy that the pin that was in Kathy Anderson's eye actually matched another pin that was located in Francis Wolke's backpack that was found in the guest room in her home. They also found Kathy's blood on Francis' pants. That's enough to tell us that they have the right suspect in this case.
Why did he do this? And how and why did Francis select this house? Was there something about it? So we think he was looking for food. You know, he was tired, he was hungry, he'd been on a bus for 5 days.
When he got back from Cincinnati, he didn't have anywhere to stay. So he was actually sleeping on a balcony in Palo Alto at the Stanford campus.
He maybe initially thought that this was an unoccupied house and I can go find some food and take a nap.
He went in and ate something, and then he went upstairs and saw the victim in her bed.
And then he told a defense investigator, he says he started hearing voices. And the voices told him, don't bitch out, time to join up. And he understood the voices to be saying, you need to kill this person in order to join the 1%. And he had always wanted to make it big in Silicon Valley.
Not only that, the voices in Francis Wolke's head said if he really wanted to be part of 1%, he had to kill someone and consume their blood.
Francis Wolke told one forensic psychologist he believed that the 1% would kill and consume human flesh for eternal youth and success and becoming part of this elite group of people.
It's horrific. It's outlandish. But I do feel like the horror kind of draws a little bit from the whole biohacking culture that I think many in Silicon Valley have been experimenting with. The fact that he felt he needed to commit this heinous crime to get there just speaks to the pull of that kind of myth.
Kathy Anderson was up in her bed when Francis Wolke began his attack. He began by strangling her. It didn't work. He stabbed her in the eye with a pen. Then he took her downstairs and attempted to behead her.
It's gruesome, it was brutal. It's every woman who lives alone's worst nightmare of what happened to her.
I think the it's hard to understand the randomness of this act, to imagine that someone at home alone would have an intruder from across the country walk into their home and kill her is almost beyond comprehension. And that may be one of the reasons that people initially thought that Daniel might have had something to do with it. From my perspective, Daniel did a heroic job of keeping the suspect there. And I don't know what would have happened in this case if it hadn't been for Daniel Baggett.
He was the one that stopped Francis Wolke from getting away. If Francis Wolke had gotten away, it's possible that they would have never found him.
The papers were pretty hard on me in the beginning because, you know, I got arrested for trespassing. I was never treated like a hero, let's just say that. But I just wish he was still here. I love Kathy very dearly, and I was just glad that I was able to do what I believe Kathy wanted me to do, which was to make sure he didn't get away. And because I firmly believe that night, the thing that was pulling me into that house was her. You know, don't let that son of a bitch get away. You probably said, well, the one person I know that'll handle this is probably, you know.
Francis Wolke.
Welcome in, guys.
Guilty by
Thanks for
reason.
tuning in.
To claim that you are not guilty by reason of insanity, one needs to either not realize that what they're doing is going to cause death to another person, or not realize that what they're doing is being done to another person.
You could argue that Francis Wolke knew what he was doing because it took him several attempts to actually kill Kathy Anderson.